that as the backup. Okay, and go ahead and hit record now.
Can't believe I messed up the I forgot to record for DTC the other night.
I heard the Mosher stuff, and I was like, "Oh
that was
man,
hilarious."
it was so funny that they introduced him as Bosch."
What's funny is he must have been listening because like he did say a lot of the same exact things that I said. So he must have been sitting there listening while we were recording and remembered the majority of the things that I said, which is pretty impressive.
That's funny.
Because his apparently the Hangout didn't record for some reason, and obviously
so
I forgot that. I know. Otherwise, he would have been able to pull it from that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yep, nothing.
You're recording, right?
Yeah. I am.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 18th installment of the Dynasty Wall Street podcast. I am Kevin Cotillo, and I will be taking you through today's little exercise that we're going to be doing. We're going to do something a little different today, but we're excited for the show. We only have one tonight, one with me today. John Bosch is here. What's going on, John?
Not much, Kevin. I'm ready. I'm interested to see how this goes. This is definitely going to be a departure from our normal setup, but should be fun. I think it's something everybody should do. What we're about to talk through.
Certainly should be fun. We'll talk through what we are doing and how we got to what we're doing. And first, just want to say that we do not have Riley Bymaster. He's off being a good college kid these days, studying for exams and taking tests, and hopefully he's going to class as well. So good luck to Riley for all of his exams that he's got going on. We're going to spend...
Nick can't make the flagship, and Riley can't make this pod. These people being responsible, doing good things. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a technically a work day for me, and I'm sitting here podcasting, so I guess you got to prioritize, right?
Exactly.
All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a little bit of an exercise since it is the quarter way through the season. We are through week 4. Week 5 is coming up, hopefully, when you hear this, and we're going to go take a look back for a little bit. We're going to go through John's rankings. He's preseason. We'll call them rankings, right?
They're not rankings. They're not rankings at all. Go on.
We're gonna go through John's. We'll call them rankings for lack of a better word, and we will. We're gonna go through them and compare them to what we expect after what we've seen through 4 weeks this season. What John expects to happen next year when he gets to the preseason. So we're gonna do a little forecasting. But we're also going to take a little bit of a look back at the same time. So John, before we get started, since it's not really rankings, as you've made that very clear, why don't you take people through your process as to what you do, and so that everyone has an idea of what kind of values we're talking about as we go through these players.
No problem. So it's something that I found actually extremely beneficial so far this year, and it started with a question of where will Le'Veon Bell be going into 2019. Not where will he be playing, but where will he be ranked? So my initial thought is I think there's a chance that he's not going to be an RB1 this time next year. And this was at the beginning of the year. That's where it started. Was I was trying to not necessarily rank where guys are right now, but I wanted to get my 2019 rankings done a year ahead of time. I think it helps when I'm trying to evaluate a trade. It might look like I'm losing out on a guy, but if it's a guy that I think is going to start 2019 way higher than a guy that, where he is right now, there's a lot of times I'm willing to do that. And I like to try and trade on future value way more than what the current value tells me, just because I think if you're right, it ends up being a huge, huge win. So that's kind of where I try to, so that's why they're not really rankings for right now, but they're maybe like, how I expect it to be and going into 2019. And then I checked back in at the quarter way. I'll do it again at the halfway point because things do change. I mean, guys do go up and down, but I kind of wanted to get a start at the beginning of the year and then track it throughout the year and see if I do notice anything by the time next year comes around, see if there's anything I can use to capitalize in future years. There's similar guys that go up and down throughout the year. I want to start being able to target that.
So just for a little bit more clarity, it's we're going to compare John's 2019 forecast as of the preseason and as of the quarter poll. So really that's kind of what we're at, right? They're forecast for next year in both scenarios, but
Yep.
two different periods of time at which you're doing them. And just for those of you, we'll get into a little bit more of the strategy at the end of the show, just to talk a little bit about why you might do this and how it might help you. But it's always good to take snapshots when you're doing fantasy stuff, because you know how much things change, particularly during the season, particularly in Dynasty. We know that Dynasty, a lot of people have that mindset that Dynasty turns into a redraft during the season, and you sort of play it like a redraft. But I don't think you can do that. I think a lot of people get caught up in that, and I don't think they do enough of what John does here, where he's forecasting throughout the season to project future values, because I think you always have to be looking at that. So it's a good exercise for people to do. And we're going to basically, what John did was send me his forecasts and told me to tear them apart. So we're going to kind of go through a little bit, and I'm going to try and beat him down a little bit on some of these. And we'll start with the running backs, and there's a little bit of a tiers broken into this. And John, maybe we can post this on Twitter at some point somehow so that people can see it after the show, after we release the episode.
I'll certainly tweet it out again. So
we'll get it out there.
Tweet out the preseason ones. A lot of people seem to enjoy it. So yeah, I'll definitely do it again.
So we're gonna go through the running backs first, and then we're gonna go through some wide receivers. We're gonna leave off tight ends and quarterbacks for this particular exercise. Not a bad idea if you want to do them. They're just in our opinions, they're not as important. So we want to focus on the two positions that'll really help you out. So John's first tier preseason for 2019 was pretty heavy in the stud range for running backs: Saquon Barkley, Todd Gurley, and Alvin Kamara. And you had a break there, which I find interesting. A lot of people had 4 in their top 4, including David Johnson and Ezekiel Elliott, and those were most of the rankings that we would see on normal rankings. But you were projecting future, so you had a big drop for David Johnson there, not being in that tier necessarily, and Ezekiel Elliott being outside of that 4. So I guess I'm curious as to what made you think that those two guys in 2019 would be out of that top tier.
Well, it's not necessarily that I think they'll be really far from it, but honestly, just Saquon, Gurley, and Kamara, I think, are that far above everybody else. Zeke, it's the off-field concerns. That will never be something that stops bothering me. That will always be in the back of my head. So I will never want to have him as like the highest tier running back, because there's always that chance that he's going to be gone for a year. So that will always hinder him in my book, no matter if he's 2 years without any charges of any kind. That's something that I will hold against him forever. Now, granted, I have him as the 4th most valuable going into 2019, so it's not like he's far off. David Johnson, it's he's getting a little bit older. I wasn't sure what we were going to see out of the Arizona offense. I'm actually really hoping that I didn't think it would be this bad. I think it'll improve, and I actually think David Johnson, it's a good time to try and go look to see if you can get him right now.
So you had David Johnson at 5. Obviously, the top 4 remained the same on your quarter projections, quarter way projections. But David Johnson drops all the way down from 5 to 8 all the way. I guess it's 3 spots, but that's fairly significant when you're talking about value for 2019. So tell me, we talked about it a little bit, and I agree with you. I didn't think the offense was going to look this bad, but we're both big Rosen fans. I have not changed on that. I actually thought he looked better than I think people are giving him credit for in his first start. So I think that offense will improve. So if I'm looking at 2019, I don't know. I know David Johnson's a little older. What's he, 26, 27 range, right? So I don't know. I think he will be better in 2019 than he will be in 2018. So maybe perceived value, I can see where you're going with there. But for me, if I'm looking at, I'm with you, go buy him, because I think you're going to get him for cheaper. And do you think that 8 is where his quote unquote free fall will stop? Or if this offense looks bad all year, are you going to get some serious value on him?
No, I don't think he falls below that. I think the bigger thing is that I dropped him a tier. So he dropped out of the tier that I had with just him and Ezekiel Elliott. he's now down in a tier where Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Le'Veon Bell. And for me, anybody in a tier is basically interchangeable. I don't really quibble too much within a tier when I'm looking at guys, if it's the top one or the bottom, because let's face it, one or two spots doesn't make that big of a difference. The reason that he dropped down is actually because of the people that came up. I mean, Christian McCaffrey and Melvin Gordon, I have been super impressed this year. I liked them going into the year. I like them a lot more now. Just the usage that they're getting is insane. The only thing that could really hurt them is injury, which could hurt everybody. Or if for some reason one of these teams were to invest a high draft pick in a running back, which I don't see San Diego doing it at all. I mean, they seem pretty set with Melvin Gordon and Eckler, who can coexist and both get points. McCaffrey, it would worry me if somehow Carolina were to fall into that, big stud back, but I don't know if that's the offense they want to run. So we both love McCaffrey. We have had our love fests of him on here before. So it's more so that those two really moved up. And then Kareem Hunt, I jumped Kareem Hunt over David Johnson just because, man, that Kansas City offense, I wasn't sure what to expect of Mahomes, but that offense is humming. And I will take Kareem Hunt. I know a lot of people are down on him. They don't think he's getting the work. He's not going to be as involved. I don't care. If all he gets is a couple of goal line rushes a game, I'm going to be pretty happy with that. That offense is going to score points. I want the running back in a high scoring offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think this week might be a little bit of a challenge for Kareem Hunt and the entire Kansas City offense. I think we might see Mahomes be the, second year quarterback or even more so type of rookie type that we expect him to be this week, and then they'll be right back on track.
I don't know if we will. Oh man,
I think so. It's going to happen eventually.
If it doesn't, can you imagine? Oh, my gosh.
You know what though? Even though we've talked about it a lot, right? There's insulated value, and I think his value is insulated for the rest of the season anyway. Because even if he struggles this week, people will.
He'll only struggle because it was the Jags.
Yeah.
That was it. So he has nowhere to go but even up higher somehow, which is seemingly impossible.
It is seemingly impossible. I do like moving Christian McCaffrey up to number 5 on your list. I think that the volume that he's getting in both, we've seen him do it in both ways, right? We've seen him get 30 or 28 carries or whatever and get over 100 yards on the ground. And then we've seen him get 10 catches in different games this season. So they're using him in multiple ways. I can't see them using a high pick on a running back. Maybe they luck into, like you said, a big back later in the draft. So that would be a little bit, but even that, I think you're just going to see maybe goal line, and goal line's not his specialty anyway. So I like that. Let's continue on through your list here. Dalvin Cook remains fairly stagnant at for moving from 8 to 9. He concerns me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. The injuries concern me. The slow start concerns me. I've never been a big Dalvin Cook guy to begin with. I loved, the college production, obviously, but the injuries definitely made me nervous. And another guy we can kind of group in there is Leonard Fournette.
I group Joe Mixon too. They all kind of have the same concerns right now, don't they?
They do. Leonard Fournette drops from 7 in your preseason to 12 on your quarter way here. So you're looking at some perceived drop in value for both of those guys, although not as much for Cook.
Yeah, I think Cook is a little safer, even though he had the big injury that took him out last year. His value, people love him. I mean, he's got a lot of fans. Leonard Fournette has a lot of haters at this point, and probably rightfully so. I mean, he's not staying healthy. He's not on the field. I don't know why he came back if he wasn't fully healthy, and it's going to cost him more time in the long run. And I mean, this is something that's happened before with him. People are getting frustrated with it. That's a guy that they're going to start to look to bail on, because if you can't put a guy in your starting lineup, you don't want to have that much of an investment in him. So I think people will start to look to move on from Leonard Fournette. If he comes back and he is healthy, I think people are going to look to try and get rid of him, which if everybody's selling, that lowers the value.
And he kicks off the tier of rookies with the exception of himself and Jordan Howard. which for you, this next tier, and we'll get to it in a second, actually, because I should step back and we should go through the Le'Veon
There's
Bell.
one big one we should
There's
talk
one
about.
big one we need to talk about here. He was number 10 on your list, and you said that this started sort of this whole exercise for you because you were curious to see if you thought he'd drop out of that first round running back. Obviously, we usually use 12 as our benchmark, so he's still in there at 10, and you still have him slightly in there at 11 at the quarter way through the season, even though he hasn't played a game. What are your thoughts there? I mean, we've talked about this a little bit off air, so I have my thoughts I'll get to in a second, but why 11?
Yeah, I don't know how much anybody's going to want to trust him. And the other options just feel a lot safer at this point. Yes, I know he will be somewhere else with a contract going into next year. I don't know what kind of contract he's going to get. If it's a contract he doesn't like, who's to say that he actually even signs it and plays? Like, maybe he does just hang it up. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think he's going to walk away from millions and millions of dollars again. But if he doesn't get what he wants, he is clearly showing that if he doesn't get what he wants, he's more than willing to not play. So he's always going to be a concern. I think he will get on the field and be productive. But again, it's going to be in a new system. We don't know exactly what it's going to be. So that unknown for me, even though we will know what the team is, we're not going to know exactly how it's going to function. Let's say he goes to a team that's not very good. What if he goes to the Colts? Yes, they have a great quarterback, Andrew Luck. They have T.Y. Hilton when he's healthy. They don't have a lot of other stuff. Oh, yeah, the great tight end duo of Ebron and Doyle. That's right. So, I mean, like, what if he goes there and everybody can focus on him defensively? To me, the ideal scenario is that he plays in Pittsburgh, which is not going to happen. So I don't see him having the same high end value that he's always had and that the guys that are above him have. I mean, there's no way that he's going to have that same value that you're going to have with Alvin Kamara, that top tier. He's just not going to get there ever again, I don't think. He's also he will be getting older. It's going to be another year, whether he takes half the year off this year or not and saves that tread on his tires. He's going to be older, and that starts to get you down in value when we're talking about Dynasty.
So I can refute all of that in one name. Any idea who that name is? I'm going to let you guess. No? Jerick McKinnon.
Oh, well, yeah.
What kind of value spike did we see?
What kind of lesson did people learn from that, hopefully?
None. I guarantee it. That's the thing. None. When Le'Veon Bell signs a contract with San Francisco,
correct.
Or
if he goes there, people are going to, I don't think it's Indianapolis. If he goes there, I don't think it's as good of a situation.
I think it's anywhere where he's going to be a guy looked upon to get heavy volume. And Indianapolis, I think will be one because they don't have, they have Hines, who looked good in the passing game, and they have Mack, who can't stay on the field, but they don't have that lead guy. Anywhere he goes that doesn't have a dominant running game yet is going to be expected to have a dominant running game with him, and that value will shoot right back up. So I think his highest remaining value will be the preseason next year.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
Yeah. That'll be the highest his value is ever again, right? And then from there,
I totally agree with you.
It'll be a continuous decline from there on, in my opinion.
Agree. So if you know that's the case, then doesn't that mean that you shouldn't value him as much as you would? I mean, like going into next year, let's say he does sign in San Francisco. Going into next year, which guy would you rather have for the remainder of his career? Christian McCaffrey or Le'Veon Bell?
Yeah, it's
Kevin, you love Bell.
That one hurts. That one hurts me because I love Christian McCaffrey, and it's
the perfect ass.
It's probably McCaffrey, but our missing co-host would probably say Bell, right? And
I don't know how he feels. I know how he feels about Christian McCaffrey. I don't know how he feels really about Bell, so I'm not sure.
He's not high enough on McCaffrey. We know that, and I don't know how he feels about Bell either. But I'm guessing he's going to take Bell for that simple reason that you look at you're expecting a 3-year production out of Bell to be enough to get you a championship, right? That's what his value is.
What about Bell or Melvin Gordon?
I actually would probably, if Bell's in a stable situation, I'd take Bell. As good as Melvin Gordon has been so far this season, and he looks great, and that he's big in that offense, I don't know how long Phillip Rivers is playing. I don't know what that offense looks like 2 years into it. I know that and we're
You don't
speculating.
know how long CJ Beathard or Jacoby Brissett are playing. Oh, wait, that's right. Quarterbacks never get hurt and nobody comes in and backs up. You
Listen, I
don't know
completely
anything
agree.
about that.
No. I agree. I agree with that. But I do think that I don't think there's going to be a coaching change in San Francisco. I don't think that, theoretically they should have Garoppolo. Maybe he gets hurt. You're right. But I don't know. I think Bell is a better back than Gordon. I think we can agree with that. As good as Gordon's looked at their peaks, Bell is probably the best back in the NFL, right?
Yeah, but he's you've got some ifs, which is now granted
Agreed.
by this time next year
Agreed.
or by the start of the 2019 preseason,
I mean,
we
Gordon,
will know where he lands, but he could land in a not ideal spot too.
you're right. I guess I'm projecting him to land in a spot where everyone will see the ideal, and that number will jump as far as his projected ranking for 2019. I think it's going to be higher than 11.
Maybe we should just put him on the Patriots, right?
No way. Then you'll kill all my love for Sony Michel, and that's a good segue into the next tier that you have here. Like I said, Fournette is in this.
Just
tier.
To be clear, I did have him like third tier. Like so, I mean, he could, which ranges from 7 to 11.
7 to 11. So you're expecting him to be in there. I still think that he's in that.
I think he's in that tier somewhere. I don't think he's going to bump up. He's definitely not going to be above Saquon, Gurley, Kamara, or Zeke. Like that's a given. Those four are above him, right?
I agree. I think he's depending on, where he signs, obviously, but I think in most cases, no matter where he signs, if he has a contract and he shows up for camp, I think he's in that Elliott, McCaffrey, Gordon tier. So, all right, let's move on though to the next tier. We did talk about Fournette being in there. I mentioned it as being the tier of rookies because you have a lot of rookies in here.
Yeah.
Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Darius Geis, Kerryon Johnson, Royce Freeman, and then of course you throw in Jordan Howard at the end there as well. Not a lot of movement for these guys, and I got to assume that's because they were rookies and you're not banking a lot of their value on what they do this year per se. Barkley being the only guy that I think was expected to do a ton. Geis not even on the field. He stays locked in right at 15 for you. Chubb, Michel, 13 and 14 respectively, have not moved for you. The only jump here a little bit, Kerryon Johnson moves up 2 spots to 16 from 18. He jumps over Royce Freeman, and you jump Howard down to 18. I like that because this past game, although I thought Howard looked decent the first couple of games, this past game made me nervous in week 4. And Kerryon Johnson's looked great. If Detroit can get out of their own way, I think he might jump even more than that. So, and it's a product of having some serious talent ahead of him. So I see where you're at, but give me your thoughts on this group and in general, Kerryon Johnson, I guess, and then his jump.
Yeah, and like you said, I didn't change much in this group, mostly because we don't really have a lot of information to go on yet. The little bit that we have seen, I think Kerryon's been better than Royce Freeman. So he's jumping up there for me, and Jordan Howard is making me a little bit more nervous. So I think he's going to lose a little bit of value going into 2019. He still has plenty of opportunity to basically maintain. I don't think he's going to fall out of. This is kind of where I cut off the running backs that I'm really interested. Everything below here are guys that, it's Devontae Freeman, Derrick Henry, Rashad Penny, Ronald Jones, guys that I'm really not confident in. So Jordan Howard's kind of the last guy that I feel comfortable really trying to go out and get to put on my team. Everybody else, I'm kind of shying away from right now. So haven't seen much movement in this little tier here. Leonard Fournette did drop into it, like you said, because he's really getting close to that, starting to scare me a lot range.
And that's a 2-tier drop for Fournette as well. So yeah. I'm with you. I can't argue with it. Like I said, I wasn't a Fournette guy to begin with, and he makes me even more nervous now. These the hamstring injury that might keep him out week 5, and now all of a sudden is a 2 to 4 week injury, and just things like that make me very nervous. And in general, we knew he was an injury prone guy coming out of college. So hasn't gotten better for him. I guess the two guys I want to ask you about real quickly before we move over to wide receiver, Rashad Penny and Ronald Jones. You said your rankings or your projections for them haven't really changed too much. You had them down at the bottom of your running backs that you'd take a shot at, and they still remain there. But is there anything they can do from weeks 5 through 8 that will shoot them up, or are you still nervous about them in general?
Get work. I mean, basically, beat out Peyton Barber, beat out Chris Carson and Mike Davis. Part of it is Seattle. I don't, everybody talks about, we don't know what Pete Carroll's doing. Nobody does. It's crazy. Like, I don't understand why would you invest in Rashad Penny and not use him? People are saying, oh, New England's only using Sony Michel because of the investment, but then Seattle's ignoring their investment. So I don't understand why he's not being used. And if he's not, it makes me wonder, is this coaching staff just really like missing the point, or is there something else that's keeping him from getting this opportunity? There is no reason Mike Davis had the week that he just had. Like, no reason at all.
No.
If Chris Carson's not playing, Rashad Penny should be being used. So that makes me nervous. Until I see them get on the field, there's no way that I can jump them up into the level where, I mean, we've seen what Nick Chubb did this weekend. We've seen what Sony Michel can do. Darius Geis, we're not going to see it all. So his value isn't going to change. It's insulated because of the injury. Basically, it locks him in. We've seen Kerryon and Royce Freeman. And so, like, we've seen them. We have not seen these other guys. So there's just no chance that I can move them up into the same tier with the other guys.
All right, I'm with you on that. So let's move over to some wide receivers. Your tier in the beginning for wide receivers looks like it was a tier of 2. You had DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham Jr. It is now a tier of 3. Michael Thomas, while he was ranked 3rd for you preseason, he is 3rd again this at this point in the season for next year. But you're calling it a 3 player tier now.
Yeah, I think he's definitely jumped up in there. I mean, the biggest concern is what's going to happen with Drew Brees. I don't know that it's going to matter. Michael Thomas looks just fantastic. So as long as anybody's chucking him the ball, I think he'll be pretty safe going forward. I mean, Hopkins, we've seen him perform with and without good quarterbacks. I think Michael Thomas can do the same thing. And I mean, Odell Beckham Jr., same scenario. Eli is a good and bad quarterback in and of himself. Sometimes he can be good, sometimes he's terrible, and usually Beckham is producing plenty for you. So these 3 receivers, they are locked at the top 3 for me.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I still get a little nervous with Michael Thomas, just given that I don't know how long Drew Brees is going to be around. I don't think
it's going to matter.
I mean, he's starting to make that case that it won't matter, that he can succeed. And even if it is a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, who they traded for, I think he can be fine with Teddy Bridgewater. He may not put up elite numbers every week, but there will be games that he takes over. So I agree with you there. So let's talk a little bit about the second tier that you had. It originally was Tyreek Hill, Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, and Antonio Brown were the tier. And you've got a couple of guys that have jumped up into that. Tyreek Hill is in there now. Stephon Diggs is in there now. And the guys,
I jumped Juju up in there too.
Juju Smith-Schuster now in that second tier of wide receivers. Juju just so young. He jumps from 13 to 8 on your list.
Yep.
Did you toy with going any higher for him?
I did.
I'm sure you did. I knew you would have.
Yeah, I love Juju. I love him, but I still, I mean, I am right on the cusp. I have Antonio Brown 7, Juju 8. Man, it's like everything in me says just do it and put Juju above Antonio Brown going in the next year. It's like right now, it's definitely still Antonio Brown for me, but like everything tells me going in the next year, it's going to be Juju being more valuable. Just the age gap alone. I probably should change that. It probably should be Juju, but man, it feels weird putting Antonio Brown down where I have him. And again, second tier. So it's not like it's far. I don't think he is in that top tier anymore, but he's now with Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, and Juju. Like that, that feels almost like a 1B elite tier if we were going to label these tiers. So
Yeah.
yeah, Juju, I'm not going to jump him up above Tyreek Hill. I'm giving up. I'm not going to fight that battle anymore. Tyreek Hill is amazing. I didn't I had him at 10 coming in to this year. I thought that's where he would rise to for 2019. Now I have him. I mean, he's fourth. Let's face it. In that, again, explosive offense, he is paired with Mahomes. He's got value. I don't care. I am somebody who does like target numbers. Like that is something that matters to me. I am just going to ignore it with Tyreek Hill and give in and say it doesn't matter. If he gets 3 catches a game, he's gonna score me 15 points. I like it's ridiculous, but it's gone on long enough that I'm not gonna argue with it anymore.
You are fully on board with the Kansas City offense. You are all in on that at putting him at 4. I can't do it. I
am all in on something Andy Reid controls.
I know. I'm still around 10 for Tyreek Hill. And that's a jump for me because I'd have him even lower in my previous thoughts on him. I value
of him though, like right now, and I think they keep this honestly, I do think Kansas City keeps this up all year. I think they look just as good as St. Louis did all year last year. And so then going in the next year, I think Tyreek's value is going to be through the roof.
Yeah, I still feel like that's part of the problem with that offense. And historically the thought process was you want any part of a good offense, right? But we've seen a little bit of a shift in that if some of these offenses have too many pieces, it can hurt their value a little bit because you're paying top end value for a guy that's sharing looks. And that's kind of contrary. Like Antonio Brown is the perfect example of that for me this year because his value's a little capped because Juju's so good. The defenses are keying in on Antonio Brown and he's getting, he's had a couple of good games, but he's just not the Antonio Brown that we expect. And when you pay exorbitant prices for a guy like Antonio Brown, you expect to get Antonio Brown every week, and the value's not there. So I'm getting a little nervous with offenses like that. And look, I think the thing is with Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins isn't as much of a deterrent as we expect him to be. So they do still have Travis Kelce and Kareem Hunt.
So what's funny is you said that you find the stacked offenses to possibly be a deterrent. I've actually changed my thinking on that. I used to never want like a running back and a wide receiver from the same team, or God forbid, 2 wide receivers. Like there's no chance I would want that. Now I don't even care anymore. Like I don't care if I want to start, if I have 3 Chiefs on my team, I'll start all 3 and feel just fine. I don't care.
So
I'll start 3 Steelers. I would start James Conner, Antonio Brown, Juju in the same lineup and feel just fine now.
Would you start Cooper Kupp and Brandon Cooks and
Yep. If I had Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, and Robert Woods, I would start all of them on the same team. Of course, I didn't start Kupp this last weekend, Pigs, anyways, but whatever. I mean, like when matchups call for it and you think that game is going to be a smash, yeah, I no longer try to avoid that at all. I don't think it matters. In today's world, you can get plenty of offensive production from teammates.
Yeah, I mean, with teams throwing 35, 40, times a game, I think with wide receivers, you might be a little bit right. I still get a little nervous. Like I said, I do think Antonio Brown's value has gone down a little bit because of that, because the emergence of Juju and the options that they have in that offense. But you're right. They will still put up points. There's one more guy I want to ask you about in this tier because he didn't move. In your rankings, he didn't, but he did move up a tier, and I'm kind of surprised by both. I'm surprised he didn't move, and I'm surprised he moved up a tier. Stefon Diggs, he was 6 before, he's 6 now. You moved him into the 2nd tier, and he's not even the top wide receiver on his team right now.
Yeah, but he's a lot younger than Adam Thielen.
He is a lot younger.
Value-wise, you're going to get more for Diggs. I mean, I love them both. I really, and if Thielen was, 2 or 3 years younger, he'd be right here ranked right next to Diggs with him. I didn't realize I was such an ageist, but I think when you're starting to really talk about values in Dynasty, just knowing how the majority of people factor age in, I think you just kind of have to. I mean, you have to take that into account. I think it's something you can exploit if you're willing to take on older guys, which I often am. I don't mind playing a guy that's a 29-year-old wide receiver. Good Lord, 29, he's super old. I don't mind that, but you're simply not going to get them as long. So, I mean, I do understand it, but you have to be willing to turn over your players a lot faster if you're going to be playing some of the 30-year-olds. And I am willing to turn over my players, but a lot of people aren't. They want to get that Stephon Diggs on their team, and they want him for the rest of his career.
All right, so let's move down to the next tier. You have Mike Evans with not a whole lot of movement from 8 to 9 and stays in the third tier of wide receivers. Corey Davis moves up a tier, but he only goes from 11 to 10. Allen Robinson looks like he also moves up a tier, goes from 12 to 11. The big one here that I think we're going to have to spend some time on, we just talked about him a little bit. Brandon Cooks goes from 19. I don't even know how many tiers down he was.
Yeah, he was low.
Looks like a couple of tiers down. Went from 19 all the way up to 12 and into your third tier of wide receivers.
Yeah, and that was basically because I was of the mindset kind of at the beginning of the year that, you know what, I don't think all of these guys can eat, and I think there's going to be some inconsistencies. And if you're looking at an offense, who's going to be the one that's probably going to be the inconsistent one? The guy that runs the deep route. Like, you know, the Brandon Cooks, he's shown in the past he can disappear for 2 weeks at a time. That's still there, I think. But I think a lot less. I mean, if this offense just keeps the pedal to the metal the way they are, it's something I'm trying to not take into account as much. I don't have to worry about him if he misses an entire week. You know, I'm trying to teach myself to ignore that, take that inconsistency out of the picture, and just settle on the fact that, hey, some weeks he's going to be not good, and other weeks he is just going to crush and win me the week. So I think there's a benefit in that I wasn't weighing the same way in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually going to lose a bet with our good friend Bobby on this one because I bet with him on preseason about Cook's production and it it wasn't because of the player. I love the player. I loved him in New England last year. I thought the guy is immensely talented. I think he can run great routes. He gets labeled as a burner a lot, and that's not really what he is. He runs crisp routes and he gets open. He has great separation. I just didn't think he could eat in an offense with that many weapons, particularly when you saw how much Goff liked Robert Woods and looked towards Robert Woods as a target monster, and Cooper Kupp, who can be a target monster as well. So I didn't think he'd eat, and he does. I like moving him up into this third tier because you're right. It looks like it's sustainable, and it looks like they're going to do it with all three of them. So I don't mind that at all. Mike Evans dropped a tier for you, or actually stayed in the same tier, right?
Yeah, just other people I think jumped over him. Jumped over
him. Are you concerned about Jameis Winston at all, or now that he's getting his job back, shouldn't be a big deal? But are you concerned about that offense in general? We saw Fitzmagic put up tons of points. Jameis didn't, and then he looked terrible in week 4, and he got benched for Jameis, who didn't look great either. But
yeah, I'm not that worried about it. I still like the Tampa Bay offense. I like targeting Jameis. I like targeting Mike Evans. I mean, honestly, he could be higher on this list. He's shown the potential to be really elite, but the guys above him are just really, really, there's a lot of talent up there. So it's competitive. It's tough to put him all the way down at number 9, but I don't know that I'd really feel comfortable taking him above any of the people above him. In a 1-for-1 trade, I think I would take everybody above him before him. So, I mean,
I can't argue with that. I probably would as well. Might be a little close on a guy like Diggs or Hill for me, but other than that, I think you're right on. All right, let's move to the next tier then. This would be your tier 4 for wide receivers. Some big names in there.
Yeah.
Julio Jones, who actually didn't change much, goes from 14 to 16. AJ Green goes from 15 to 17. There and there, the two biggest names that I guess I want to get your opinion. Is this age? Do you hate the fact that Julio doesn't score touchdowns, even though he's on pace for like 3,000 yards?
I don't hate that actually. Like, I mean, Trust me, I wish he did because I have him on a lot of teams. It'd be really nice, but I'm actually quite okay with 25 PPR points a week. Sure, that when he gets those touchdowns, it's nice when he approaches the 40-point mark. It is. It's just age. That's all it is. That's the only reason that I think his value is going to decline going into 2019. I think he has peaked. I don't think he's ever going to reach the same heights that he once was. It's just that's what happens with guys as they start to get a little bit older. He's going to be 30 going into next year. Certainly not dead. And he's certainly that type of wide receiver that I love to target because you start to get that age discount. I think he's going to be productive until he stops playing. I don't know when it's going to be. It could be 3 years from now. He could be Larry Fitzgerald. And every year you just keep getting one more good year out of him. So I probably will start to try and invest because I really do think he will be valued outside of the wide receiver 1 range. But I think he's going to put up wide receiver 1 numbers for the remainder of his career. It's just that little uncertainty that people feel, of how long that'll last, that they start to give a little bit of a discount. I'll try and take advantage of that for sure. Same with AJ Green. I mean, same exact story.
Yeah, I agree. Same story there because they're age guys. I think they're going to produce until they're done done with the game, and then they're going to walk away. Similar to Calvin Johnson, who, I think he walked away early, obviously, but was still producing at a top level, when he did. So I think it's similar. It'll be similar to that. A couple of guys a little higher up than those two in the same class or tier. Keenan Allen drops from 7 all the way down to 13. Cooper Kupp makes a big jump from 22 to 14. And Amari Cooper drops from 9 to 15. So a lot of movement for those 3 guys. Interestingly enough, they're the younger guys in this tier for you. And Amari Cooper is the youngest one of them all, and he's dropping all the way down. You hate Gruden, huh? It's
I still am a love Amari guy. Like Amari. I do love Amari. I've tried to get him, and shockingly, I can't find this discount that people talk about, just get rid of Amari. Funny, nobody in any of the leagues I play in are just getting rid of Amari. So nope. I can't seem to find that discount, which is extremely frustrating. I get he's fallen down to, that area where Brandon Cooks was because of those inconsistencies. And maybe I should learn that lesson before it hurts me with Amari, and ignore it. But it's a pattern with him at this point. And until he starts to show consistently that he's going to get targeted, and it's not even his fault. Like when they force him targets, he puts up points. When Derek Carr just suddenly forgets he's on the field, he has bad games. So I do not like Gruden all that much, but I think Gruden's at least smart enough to hopefully realize, hey, we really do need to force the ball to Amari Cooper. And if Derek Carr's not getting him the ball, like he needs to just tell him, throw him the ball. I don't care if he's double teamed, throw him the ball. Because when you do, good things happen, it seems. They're a little bit of a mystery. So yeah, he's fallen. That was the one that hurt, to drop him down to 15, to be honest. Just it was a big drop for me. But I don't know that he's going to have that value coming into 2019. If 2018 continues this way, he's definitely going to have a reduced value going into 2019.
So Keenan Allen was in the same tier before the season, and now he's back and still with the same tier. He drops 6 spots as well, from 7 to 13. I'm not down on Keenan so much. I know the season hasn't been great for him so far. There's emergence of other weapons in the offense with Mike Williams starting to produce a little bit, and we see what Gordon's been able to do. But there's no tight end to speak of, and maybe Hunter Henry comes back, but I don't know who's banking on him at this point. We just haven't seen him really to be what everyone expected him to be yet. But so what? Why so down on Keenan Allen? Is it more everyone else went up?
Yeah, I think it's more that the other guys went up. I mean, Brandon Cooks went up. I bumped him up. Who else did I bump up? Corey Davis, I bumped him up. I think it's time. Juju bumped up. Somebody had to fall down, and it wasn't going to be Mike Evans falling all the way out of wide receiver 1 range. It's not going to be one of the Steelers guys. I love Diggs. So somebody has to fall down through there. Like, and if I'm going to put Brandon Cooks up there, Keenan Allen was the casualty. So he's falling right outside that wide receiver one range for me. Not to say that he couldn't put up wide receiver one numbers every week. I mean, that could certainly happen, but I think just value wise, I think he's losing a little bit of it. People are starting to see a little bit of Mike Williams. People that fear the offenses can't support two guys being really good might start to give a little bit of a concern to Keenan Allen. So for me, he falls just because of that. Basically, the other guys just moved up and somebody had to go down.
So I haven't done the math, but it looks like Calvin Ridley, who leads off the next tier, is the biggest jump on the board. Goes from 31
has to be
18. Yeah. I mean, he's looked phenomenal. You can't argue with the production. He's a great, already seems to have a good rapport with Matt Ryan, and that offense is clicking right now. They're putting up huge points.
Yep.
Certainly sustaining both, Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and even Mohamed Sanu in last week was productive. So I like this rank here. He kicks off your fifth tier of wide receivers, but that's still within the wide receiver 2 range. And I think between him and Cortland Sutton, who is starting to get a little more work, hasn't been quite as productive as Calvin Ridley, obviously, but I think these are the guys that I could see creeping into that next tier next year. I like where you have them, but I could also see them, if we talk about this after week 8, they might be in that tier with Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper and Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, see, the reason that I couldn't move them up even higher, and I love Sutton. Like I was a little crazy high on him coming into 2018 for my 2019 expectation. When I tweeted it out, he was the name that everybody's like, you really think he's going to be all like a 18th? That's where I had him coming into the year, and I'm like, yeah, I really actually do. I think he's going to come in at some point this year and really start to get work. And I think going into 2019, the expectation for Sutton is that he takes over. So he unfortunately did drop just because Calvin Ridley's already shown exactly what I think Cortland Sutton can do. And I finally did have to move Jarvis Landry up higher. He's not a guy that I've ever really targeted on anything because the people that love him. Like, so you're not going to get him. So like, it's not even worth trying. So I don't, but I wasn't sure what was going to happen in Cleveland. That was an uncertainty going into this season. We've seen it now that he does get some targets. I mean, they've gotten rid of some wide receivers. They've thinned the herd a little bit, so he doesn't have as much to fight with to get some targets. Granted, Callaway's looking good there, and it looks like Baker does like to throw it to Callaway, but I think he's going to use Jarvis still plenty. That I'm fine with Jarvis being right in this wide receiver 2 range. Calvin Ridley, I don't think it's going to slow down. It's going to slow down some. I mean, obviously he cannot keep up this pace, right? That's just impossible.
I mean, a 2 touchdown per game pace is a little unrealistic.
Pretty unrealistic, but I think he's going to continue to be involved in the game plans. It takes defenses. They're not going to shy away from Julio to cover Calvin Ridley because I think they know they'll just get destroyed by Julio then. So defense is still focused on Julio, which is going to leave Calvin Ridley all season. I mean, was it last game? So the defense finally made a shift, I think towards the end of the game and put their better cornerback over on Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
But it took like the whole game. It took the whole game before they finally decided to do it. I don't think anybody's going to come in and start with their primary cornerback on Calvin Ridley and say, all right, let's play our second best guy matching up with Julio Jones.
Right.
Like that's a recipe for disaster. So I think Calvin Ridley's going to have good matchups going through the rest of the year, and it will slow down touchdown wise, but game plan involvement, catches, receptions, targets. I think that's going to remain looking pretty nice all through 2018.
All right, so we are getting a little tighter on time, so I'm going to pick a few from the rest of the list that I find interesting, and we'll kind of do a quick hit with them. I was wrong about Calvin Ridley being the highest jump because I see one that stands out to me as even higher right now.
Kenny Galladay.
Well, both Kenny Galladay and the guy right behind him, it looks like
Mike Williams
and Kenny Galladay both jump a significant amount here. Kenny Galladay jumps up 21 spots from 46 to 25, and Williams goes from 41 to 26.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I think Kenny Galladay is going to be the most valuable wide receiver on the Lions offense going into 2019. I don't think I think the other guys are going to be close to him, but at this point, he's the one that people are starting to key on, that he's the younger one. Again, age, it plays a factor in Dynasty. It really, really does. He's looked really good this year. They've all looked good. I mean, that offense looks like a good passing offense. Sure would be nice if they had a little bit of a nice running back to put on the field to get some offense too, to go along with it, put Carrion on the field more. So that's why Galladay jumps up for me. I didn't feel that he was going to take over as much of the offense as he has. I didn't think there was that much to go around, but there is, because they're just not going to run the ball. That's fine. They're just going to throw the ball, which is great for Stafford. As always, he's a great quarterback to have. And Galladay's looked quite good. So yeah, he made a big jump for me. Mike Williams, people have seen it now. He's on the field. He's healthy. If he maintains that all year, he's definitely going to spike back up. People are going to remember that investment that they had in him. Those days of maybe I could get Mike Williams for a second, and that's gone. I mean, that was out the window as soon as he got on the field, and the first time he was targeted in the end zone and made that nice catch.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody saw it. It was done.
80 yards and a touchdown in his first game, and that value was shot. I loved the value I got him in auctions and startups this season, because I do think he's going to be a productive player for a while there. So I like that one there. All right, you are killing our co-host Riley Bymaster by dropping Anthony Miller from 26 to 33. We don't need to spend any time on it. I just want to point it out for Riley's sake.
Again, just to make sure, he's not really a drop. I mean, if I could have maintained him there and not moved anybody else up, I would have. But people moved up. Somebody had to move down.
Chris Godwin's one of those guys that moved up from 42 to 30. You like what you've seen so far out of him?
I do like what I've seen so far, and he also gets a lot of buzz. So that definitely, for me, that factors into value, because if people start talking about a guy, that value goes up. And for Chris Godwin, I do like what I've seen. I think he's going to return the value that you're going to invest too. I would feel perfectly comfortable putting him at, the wide receiver 3 range now.
Yep.
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all. I think that's almost a given.
Yeah, I agree there. I think that's pretty solid bet as well. Tyler Boyd is a guy that we talked about a little bit, not even ranked in your preseason, all the way up to we're calling it 35.5 because he's slotted in between the preseason darling Nelson Aguilar and Alshon Jeffrey, who had a great return from injury in his first game. So, but Tyler Boyd, we talked about it a little bit. He's been productive, over 100 yards the last 2 games. I think he had 90 yards the game before that. He's got a couple of touchdowns on the season. So, and he looks like a go-to weapon for Andy Dalton.
Yeah, you guys know that I don't trust Bengals. Unfortunately, I am fully biased against the Bengals. That's probably why he wasn't ranked at all coming in. No, coming in, I don't think anybody knew who that second target was going to be on the Bengals offense. I think everybody knew whoever it is going to have some value, but how could you predict who it was going to be? I mean, they just invested in John Ross, who even he has looked okay and injured after he looks okay every single week. But Tyler Boyd has definitely come on strong this year. He is getting looked at by Andy Dalton constantly. So he's there. AJ Green has taken the majority of the coverage, makes it a little easier for Tyler Boyd. And Andy Dalton is actually using it. He's making the easy passes to him, and he's getting the yards. He's getting the touchdowns. He looks good. So he definitely made a huge jump from basically off the radar to looking pretty good in a wide receiver 3 spot right now.
All right, we'll finish this off with Chris Hogan, who drops from 39 to 47. We did almost an entire show on Chris Hogan, saying we were shocked with people and where they thought his value is, and maybe they were right.
Yeah. I think it looks bad. It looks bad right now. They've added weapons. That was the big draw for him, was they don't have much else. He was it. He's the one they have to throw to. Little did we know Tom Brady was going to throw to Philip Dorsett. Okay. And then they bring in Josh Gordon. Edelman now will come back. We're going to see how that's going to work into the offense. We get to see that tonight, actually. right? This is Edelman's big return for
Edelman's
your
big return. I will be at the stadium. And the interesting thing with Hogan is I am curious to see what happens with Edelman back, because if you're looking at Chris Hogan as your number one option on your team, it's not going to work out. But if he is the second or third option, he's
He's going to
more
be
likely
open.
to get open. And so
Yes.
we may see some of that value return I'll be curious to see where he ends up when we get to week 8
Yeah.
and after. So we'll look
I
back
don't
at
I don't
that.
know that he can climb. I think that's that's my issue with him now is
Yeah.
I think we know what his max is. On a good week, his max is going to be a wide receiver too. He's probably a flex play more often than not if you have to.
Yep.
In the right matchup, he's a good flex play. That still does have value. I mean, saying could be your fourth wide receiver on your team, that's not a terrible option, but it's not something that people are going to invest much to get, unfortunately, because you can find those guys all over the place in this NFL now. There's wide receivers plenty.
Agreed. All right. That wraps up our discussion of John's preseason and quarter poll projections for 2019. Hopefully you found this valuable. John, real quickly before we get out of here, tell people why they might want to do something like this and what it does for you as far as how you navigate your leagues throughout the year.
Yeah, so I mean the biggest thing for me it helps with is trading. As soon as I identify my team as, maybe I'm not going to compete this year, it lets me really know what guys do I want to target for next year. All right, Cortland Sutton, I really think he's going to be worth so much more going into next year than what he's worth right now. So I'm going to go and try and get him right now for the price right now. And maybe even a little bit more. I don't care if I overpay for a guy, if it's somebody that I truly believe is going to increase beyond what I invested. And Cortland Sutton is probably my primary target. When I sat down to do this preseason, I think I sent out offers in a lot of leagues for him. People weren't ready to give anything away because nobody knew how their seasons were going to go. But as we get especially to the halfway point and that playoff picture in your league becomes a lot more clear, if there's a guy that is in the playoff hunt, Cortland Sutton isn't quite being worked into the offense as much yet, and I'm out of it, I'm offering that guy whatever veteran help I can offer. If I can give him, let's say Emmanuel Sanders is still, producing very well in Denver. If I can flip Emmanuel Sanders to him and get plus Emmanuel Sanders plus, at that point, you'll have to give, you'll still have to give something. I will flip that because going into 2019, I don't think Sanders is going to be worth much to me, but I think Sutton has a chance to be worth a whole lot. And that guy can be looking at it as, hey, I've got a chance to win this league right now. It's worth sacrificing Cortland Sutton to do it. So that's kind of how I really try to use it. It's very helpful for me as a quick little guide. It's not something that I want to have to go and do on the fly when I get a trade offer, because it's something that does take a little bit of time to think about.
All right. Well, we want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of the Dynasty Wall Street podcast. Just want to remind everyone you can follow us on Twitter at Dynasty Wall Street. That's ST for Street on that. You can follow John at John Bosch FF. You can follow Riley at DTC_Riley B. And you can follow me at Kevin Cotillo. We talked about it before. I don't know if it's going to happen. We're still working on the t-shirt thing. So if you are interested in t-shirts, hit up one of us on Twitter and let us know that it's something you would be interested in. So we'll see if we can get enough volume together so we can get that going. And that we will be back in a couple more weeks to do more of a traditional type of Wall Street. So hopefully you enjoy this format. Hit us up and let us know. Give us some feedback if you liked this, and we'll look to do something again towards the halfway point. Until then, we'll talk to you soon.